Now, I was reminded here when I said we have a riveter, I was very quickly reminded that she was a welder and not a riveter. So I don't know if there's some sort of a social status in the people working on the ships. Oh, she says there is. So would you like to talk to us for a few minutes?
Agnes is 96.
She's only 96?
Yeah.
You better take care of yourself. You've only got 30 or 40 years left. Okay. Okay. Let's get this up close so everybody can hear you. I can turn that around a little bit. This will. How's
Okay, that should be pretty good. Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Agnes Moore, and I was a welder in Kaiser Shipyard 3 at Richmond. I heard about the job on my car radio. I was visiting my sister in San Francisco, and I was listening to the music, and all of a sudden the music stopped, and the announcer came on and said, "Women, do something for your country. Go to the Richmond shipyard and be a welder." So I didn't know what a welder was, but I knew it must be something important because they were asking on the radio for us to go do it. Radio was very important back in those years, and so I got dressed up in my nice clothes because I was going to apply for this important job. And I had on high-heeled slippers, black patent leather, which was very fashionable. I had a purse to match. You had to have your shoes and purse had to match back then. And my best black suit and my white silk blouse and kid gloves. You had to have gloves if you were going to get dressed up. And then the final touch was a hat with a veil on it. So I thought I was looking pretty good for this important job. So I walked into the employment office, and the receptionist asked me if she could help me, and I said, "Yes, I want to be a welder." And she kind of hesitated a minute, and then she said, "We have lots of vacancies in the office." And I said, "No, this is an important job. They're asking for us to go do this on the radio, and that's what I want to do." And so she filled out the papers and sent me out to the shipyard and told me which line I had to get into. And they filled out a lot of papers and sent me to the welding school. But some of these papers told me what I had to buy to wear to do this welding job. I had to have cowhide overalls, a cowhide jacket. This was really rough cowhide leather, heavy, very heavy. High-top shoes with steel toes, gloves to the elbow that was lined with asbestos. And anyhow, I went to the welding school. I was there 2 weeks, and they took me out to the outfitting dock. And so I met a man there at the top of the gangplank that told me he was my lead man, and he would show me my job. So I tried to follow him. He just went in big, long steps, and, I have all this heavy gear on me and a rod pot made out of a 4-inch piece of pipe and 5 pounds of rod in it, and a stinger around my neck that was really heavy, and it was 6 feet long lead line on it that was filled full of copper wire, and that was heavy. So, and then a hood on my head, and so I try to follow him. So we're walking across this deck, and all kinds of lines and everything strewn all over it, and water all running everywhere. I thought they had something broken, and when it got fixed, we'd have a nice place to work. Well, when they got it fixed, the ship was finished and it was gone, and then we had another mess to clean up. So anyhow, I'm following him, and we go into this escape hatch, a hole on one side of it. It didn't have a door on it yet. When it was finished, it would be a watertight door, and these escape hatches went from top deck down to bottom, and this is the hatch that one of these men was talking about that they got into, and there's a ladder inside. Hopefully the boys from down at the bottom of the ship could climb up when they got torpedoed and get out on the top of the ship. Well, anyhow, went in this hole on one side. These things are about 4 feet across. And here I am dragging all this heavy stuff. And so then I go out the other side. He's already ahead of me. And I looked, and he was just going around the corner of this big black hole there. Turns out that was called a hold, H-O-L-D. That's where they stored all of the merchandise or whatever it was they were carrying. They loaded it down into that hole to the bottom decks and all the other decks where they put it, and it was put down in there by these big cranes. Well, okay, I ducked my head to go out the other side of the hatch, and my hood fell off. I just come out of the welding school, you know, and I didn't know I had to have it really tight on my head. And so when I ducked my head to go out, it fell off, and it started scooting over to this big black hole over there. And I thought, well, there goes another $7. So anyhow, I just about the time it was ready to fall over the edge, my lead man came back around the corner and grabbed it. So then he took me on down in the bottom of the ship and showed me where I would be welding. Well, that was my first night on the job, so he gave me a real easy job. It was flat, welding the deck to the bulkhead. So I got through that night just fine, and as time went on, I was welding vertical and overhead, whatever they needed. I was crawling into the double bottoms through an 18-inch hole, and then these double bottoms, the bulkheads that went through them, were 18 inches apart, and I could just barely fit my body in between there, and I had to go in this hole and then completely bend to go up to the side of the ship. So you just crawl. That's the only way you can get there. The deck over you is touching your head every time you raise it up. So I had an electric bulb on a long line, and I could plug that in outside someplace, and I would have a light when I was in there. And very thoughtfully, they told us to buy this big flashlight. It was about 18 inches long, and very heavy. Well, it came in handy that night because my light bulb broke, and one of the sparks hit it from my weld. And so I used the flashlight then. When I would stop welding, I had to look at the weld, but I had a brush and a hammer in my rod pot, and I would take the hammer and scrape the flux off of the weld. Then I had to brush it real good, and I was checking it to see if it had pinholes or undercut. If it had either one of those, my weld wasn't good, and it would have to be chipped out. Well, hopefully, they always look good to me. So I don't know what they look like to the inspector, but I think they were good. And so I worked there until Japanese surrendered in July of 1945. And they made an announcement that if any of the women wanted to leave the shipyard, they could feel free to do so, because it would leave more work for the women that had to stay and work. And Kaiser had to complete an order of 25 Liberty ships for England. Even though the war was over, they had to do the commitment for these 25 ships. So I left. I had gotten married in 1943, and my husband, his company was sending him to Oregon on a project. So I went there with him. So that was a partial story about my welding in this shipyard.
Thank you. I've got one question for you. What was your hourly wage?
It was 95 cents an hour, and then when I passed the journeyman welding test, I got $1.38.
Okay.
And that was the top hourly rate of pay in the shipyard. The welders made the highest pay.
So there was a hierarchy.
And we didn't have riveters. They built airplanes with riveters.
Okay.
That's why I told you I was a welder.
Thank you.
I built ships.
Thank you. Was she?
And I want to take my hat off, if I had one, to these wonderful men here that risked their life while we were making a good salary and sleeping in our bed at night. Thank you.
We were making a good salary too. We made $21 a month.
Hey, $21 a month. Boy, you guys are rich.
Giving your blood guts.
But that included room and board, you know. Yes.